Your computer is frozen. That spinning wheel of death won't stop. Your applications are crashing. Everything's running slow. And someone inevitably says those 5 words you've heard 1,000 times. Have you tried restarting it? And you roll your eyes, because it sounds like the laziest tech support advice ever. Like telling someone with a headache to drink water. It's what people say when they don't actually know how to fix the problem. But here's the thing, nobody explains. Here's what your IT department knows but never bothers to tell you. Restarting actually does fix most computer problems. Not because it's magic, not because computers are mysterious, but because of how computers manage resources over time. And once you understand why the restart works, you'll see your computer completely differently. In the next 15 minutes, you're going to learn why your computer slowly destroys itself just by running normally. And why the simple act of turning it off and back on is basically hitting an undo button on hours of accumulated chaos. Let's talk about what happens during your actual workday on your computer. You boot up your laptop in the morning, open Chrome, start browsing. Then you open Slack for work messages, maybe Spotify for music, then Microsoft Word for that document you're working on, Excel for some data, Zoom for a meeting, Adobe Acrobat to read a PDF, your email client, maybe Photoshop for a quick edit. By lunch, you've got 12 applications open, 43 browser tabs. Your computer's been running for 4 hours straight, and it's starting to feel sluggish. That video in Zoom is choppy. Word is taking forever to save. Your mouse cursor occasionally freezes for a second. You close a few tabs, quit some applications you're not using anymore, but the sluggishness doesn't really go away. Your computer still feels bogged down even though you freed up what you think is the problem. So you just deal with it. You work slower. You wait for things to load. You curse at your laptop for being terrible. And by the end of the day, you're convinced you need a new computer because this one is clearly dying. But here's what's actually happening. Your computer isn't dying, it's drowning. Drowning in something called memory leaks, zombie processes, and resource fragmentation. All of these things accumulate every single minute your computer runs. And closing applications doesn't fix them, cleaning up your desktop doesn't fix them, nothing fixes them except a complete restart. And this is the gap between what you think closing an app does and what it actually does. You think when you click that X and close Chrome, everything Chrome was using gets returned to the system. Clean slate. All resources freed? Not even close. Chrome might close its windows, but it probably left behind orphaned processes. Bits of memory that were allocated but never properly released. Background services that keep running even though the main application quit. Cache files that are locked and can't be accessed. Network connections that are still open waiting for responses that will never come. Every application you run creates this mess. Some apps are better at cleaning up after themselves than others. But no app is perfect. They all leak resources, they all leave digital garbage behind, and your operating system tries to manage this chaos, but it's fighting a losing battle. This matters because by the end of a typical workday, your computer isn't running slow because you're doing too much. It's running slow because of all the invisible debris from everything you already did. Hours of accumulated waste that's clogging up your system's ability to function. You're not overloading your computer, you're suffocating it with its own leftovers. And the only way to clear all that out is to restart, to flush the entire system and start fresh. It's not lazy tech advice, it's the only solution that actually addresses the root problem. There's this thing I call the memory leak spiral. And it's happening on your computer right now, whether you know it or not. Here's how it works. When an application needs to do something, it asks your operating system for memory, RAM, random access memory. Think of it like asking to borrow a cup of flour from a neighbor. You need it for what you're making right now. Your operating system says, sure, here's some memory. The application uses it to store data it's working with. Maybe it's the text of the document you're typing, or the image you just loaded, or the video you're streaming. When the application is done with that data, it's supposed to return the memory. Give the cup back to the neighbor, tell the operating system, hey, I'm done with this, you can give it to someone else now. But sometimes applications forget, or they crash before they can return it, or they think they might need it again later, so they just hold on to it. And that memory sits there, allocated, marked as in use, but nobody's actually using it. That's a memory leak. And it's like borrowing cups from your neighbor and never returning them. Eventually, your neighbor runs out of cups, your operating system runs out of available memory, and now when applications ask for memory, there isn't enough to give them. So everything slows down. Because your operating system has to work really hard to find available memory, it starts shuffling things around, moving data between RAM and your hard drive, compressing things, desperately trying to free up space for new requests. This happens all day long. Every application leaks a little bit. Chrome is notorious for this. Leave Chrome running with a bunch of tabs open and watch your memory usage climb higher and higher. Those tabs aren't releasing memory properly. They're holding on to it even when you're not looking at them. And closing Chrome doesn't always fix it, because sometimes the memory stays allocated even after the program quits. It's sitting there in your RAM, marked as used, but orphaned. No application owns it anymore, but it hasn't been freed. The only thing that clears this out? A restart. When you restart, all of memory gets wiped. Every allocation gets released, every cup gets returned. You start with a completely clean slate. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Memory leaks are just part of the problem. There's also what I call process zombies. When you run a program, your operating system creates a process. That's the actual running instance of the application. And processes are supposed to die when you close the application. They're supposed to terminate cleanly and disappear. But sometimes they don't. Sometimes a process gets stuck. Maybe it's waiting for something that never happens. Maybe it crashed in a way that left it in limbo. Maybe it's a background service that the main application forgot to shut down. These zombie processes sit there. They're not doing anything useful, but they're consuming resources, they're taking up a slot in your process table, they're holding onto file handles, they're keeping network connections open. They're occupying memory. Think of it like a restaurant where people finish eating but never leave. They're done with their meal, they're just sitting there taking up tables. And the restaurant can't seat new customers because all the tables are occupied by people who should have left an hour ago. Your computer's process table is like those restaurant tables. There's only so many available. And when zombie processes take them up, legitimate applications struggle to run. The operating system has to work around them. Performance degrades. You can't fix this by closing applications. Because the application's already closed, the zombie process is what's left behind. And normal users don't know how to identify and kill zombie processes. Even if you open Task Manager on Windows or Activity Monitor on Mac, you probably can't tell which processes are zombies and which are legitimate. But a restart kills everything. Every single process terminates. Clean sweep. All those zombies disappear, the process table clears out, your computer starts fresh with only the essential system processes running. Pay attention to this. The problems that accumulate on your computer aren't things you can see. They're invisible. They're happening in the background while you work. And they can't be solved by being more careful or by cleaning up your files. They're inherent to how computers manage resources. And the only reset button is a restart. Now let's talk about something particularly sneaky called file handle exhaustion. This one is a silent killer that most people don't even know exists. Every time a program opens a file, it gets a file handle. That's basically a reference that lets the program access that file. Like getting a library card that lets you check out books. When you're done with the file, you're supposed to close it and return the handle. But applications sometimes forget, or they keep files open because they think they might need them, or they crash before closing them properly, and those file handles stay open. The operating system thinks the file is still in use. It can't give that handle to another program. Your operating system has a limited number of file handles. Not unlimited, there's a maximum. And when you run out, weird things start happening. Applications can't open files. They crash with mysterious errors. Your computer behaves erratically. You might get an error that says too many files open or cannot access file. And you're confused because you're not doing anything crazy. You just have a few programs running. How could you possibly have too many files open? But behind the scenes, those programs have been accumulating open file handles all day. Chrome opened hundreds of cache files. Spotify is holding references to your music library. Your operating system is tracking log files. Every application is leaving file handles open. And eventually, you hit the limit. Closing applications sometimes helps. but not always, because file handles can leak just like memory. They get orphaned, the application that opened them is gone, but the handle stays open. Stuck, unusable, taking up a slot in your limited pool. And again, restarting fixes this completely. When you restart, all file handles close. Every single one. The entire file system gets reset. You start with 0 open files. Fresh capacity, no accumulated garbage. Your computer is constantly running into these invisible limits. Memory limits, process limits, file handle limits, network connection limits, thread limits. Every resource has a maximum, and every program you run chips away at those maximums, slowly filling them up with leaked resources and zombie allocations. Here's the uncomfortable truth nobody in tech wants to talk about. Modern software is kind of terrible at resource management. We act like software engineering has gotten so sophisticated, like we've mastered the art of writing efficient code. But in reality, most applications leak resources constantly. They're sloppy, they don't clean up properly. They assume infinite resources and just grab what they need without worrying about returning it. Why? Because memory is cheap now. Computers have gigabytes of RAM, terabytes of storage. Developers don't obsess over efficiency like they used to. They write code quickly, they ship features fast, and if the code leaks a little memory or leaves a few zombie processes, who cares? The user will restart eventually. And that's exactly what happens. We've collectively accepted that computers need to be restarted regularly. It's not a bug, it's a feature. It's the pressure release valve that keeps the whole system from collapsing under its own accumulated waste. This is why IT departments have policies about restarting, why they push automatic updates that force restarts, why they tell you to restart once a week. They know the software you're running is slowly destroying itself, and regular restarts are the only thing keeping it functional. It's not planned obsolescence, it's not a conspiracy, it's just lazy resource management at scale. And restarting is the band-aid we've collectively agreed to use instead of fixing the underlying problem. This is why the tech world has this weird relationship with uptime. Server administrators brag about systems running for months or years without restarting, because servers are different. They're running carefully controlled software, enterprise-grade applications that are actually engineered to not leak resources, that manage memory properly, that clean up after themselves. But your laptop, your desktop, running consumer software like Chrome and Spotify and Microsoft Office, those things leak like a sieve. They're not designed for long-term stability. They're designed to work well enough until you restart. Let me tell you about my friend Jordan. Jordan's one of those people who never shuts down their laptop, ever. Just closes the lid when they're done, puts it to sleep, opens it up the next day, and keeps working. Jordan's laptop has been running continuously for 3 weeks, maybe longer. And Jordan can't understand why it's so slow, why Chrome takes forever to load pages, why Word keeps freezing, why Zoom meetings are a laggy mess. Jordan's tried everything. Cleared browser cache, uninstalled programs, run antivirus scans, cleaned up old files. Nothing helps. The laptop just keeps getting worse. And Jordan's convinced it's a hardware problem. Time to buy a new computer. But here's what Jordan doesn't realize. That laptop has been accumulating garbage for 3 weeks. 3 weeks of memory leaks. 3 weeks of zombie processes. 3 weeks of open file handles that should have been closed. 3 weeks of fragmented memory. 3 weeks of chaos piling on top of chaos. The laptop isn't broken. It's buried under weeks of accumulated technical debt that can only be cleared by restarting. Now, compare that to my other friend, Taylor. Taylor restarts their laptop every single night before bed. Just shuts it down completely. Starts fresh every morning. Takes about 60 seconds to boot up and log back in. Taylor's laptop is 3 years old. Same age as Jordan's. But it runs smooth, applications open quickly, everything feels responsive, no mysterious slowdowns or crashes. Taylor isn't doing anything special. Not running optimization software, not upgrading hardware, just restarting regularly. Clearing out all that accumulated garbage before it becomes a problem. Giving the system a clean slate every day. Notice the difference? Jordan's fighting against weeks of accumulated resource leaks. Taylor never lets the problems build up in the first place. Same software, same usage patterns, Completely different experiences. Here's what most people don't realize. The speed of your computer isn't just about the hardware you have. It's about how much invisible garbage has accumulated since the last restart. A 5-year-old laptop that was restarted this morning can feel faster than a brand new laptop that's been running for 2 weeks. Because performance isn't just about processor speed or RAM capacity. It's about how efficiently your operating system can manage resources. And efficiency drops dramatically as leaks and zombies accumulate. Restarting isn't a workaround. It's not a crutch for bad software. Well, actually, it kind of is. But it's also the only practical solution we have. Because fixing the underlying resource management problems in every application you use would require rewriting millions of lines of code across thousands of programs. So instead, we restart. We flush the system, we clear the accumulated waste, and we start fresh. It's not elegant, but it works. And it works because it addresses the fundamental problem of resource accumulation that every running system experiences. So here's what we've uncovered. Your computer accumulates invisible garbage just by running. Memory leaks from applications that don't return what they borrowed. Process zombies that stick around after programs close. File handles that never get released. Network connections that stay open. All of this piles up every minute your computer is running. Closing applications doesn't fix these problems because the garbage they leave behind persists even after they're gone. Your operating system tries to manage it, but eventually the accumulation becomes too much. Performance degrades, things slow down, weird errors appear, and restarting clears it all. Every leak gets plugged, every zombie dies, every handle closes, every resource returns to its starting state. You get a completely fresh system with none of the accumulated waste. The question isn't whether you should restart regularly. You absolutely should. The question is whether you'll recognize the symptoms of resource exhaustion when they appear. Because now you know that slowdowns and crashes aren't always about what you're doing right now. They're often about everything you did before. So next time someone tells you to restart your computer and you feel that eye roll coming, remember what's actually happening. They're not being lazy. They're telling you to flush weeks of accumulated technical debt, to clear the invisible garbage clogging your system, to hit the reset button on resource chaos, because your computer isn't magic and it's not mysterious. It's just a machine that slowly suffocates under its own leftovers until you give it permission to start fresh. And once you see that, you can't unsee it.